everyone, my name is Monique, and today I'm going to be showing you how to play a game that is coming to Kickstarter soon called How to Save a World, designed by Yuval Grinspun and published by Burnt Island Games, who are helping sponsor this video. In this game, players lead a group of scientists who are trying to save a planet called Alaria from being destroyed by an impending asteroid. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that features worker placement and resource management. And so today, I'm going to be showing you how to play it. But before we begin, I do need to mention that everything that you see here is considered a prototype copy of the game, which means some of the components as well as some of the art are not considered final. For more information regarding the game, as well as the campaign, I've included a link to their Kickstarter in the description below. Lastly, if you enjoy content like this and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing. And with that, we are ready to begin. So if you'd please direct your attention to the center of the table, we're all set up here for a 2-player game of How to Save a World. Welcome to Alaria. For now, because as you can see, there is a very scary asteroid that is headed in the direction of this planet. So it is our job as leaders of scientific organizations to figure out how to save a world. Now, the whole reason why we're here in the first place is because Alaria is the only planet to have ever been discovered that contains advanced life forms. And so scientists are here to study the various species that are found on that planet. Fortunately, we already have 3 plans of action that correspond to these 3 tracks on the board. We have Plan A, which is firing the lasers directly at the asteroid. Now, if that doesn't work, we have Plan B, which is deflecting the asteroid with our shields. And if both plans fail, we have our last resort, which is evacuating all of the wildlife to our artificial habitats on the moon. And so over the course of the game, players will be contributing to each of these 3 projects, and at the end of the game, you'll score points depending on how far along each of these tracks you were, scoring the most amount of points on the pivotal project that actually saves Alaria. And so the game is played over the course of several rounds, and each round, players will be taking turns both on the planet of Alaria as well as the moon, taking actions such as gaining resources, you'll be performing research, and advancing each of the 3 projects. In addition, players will be playing action cards from their hand and gaining the 3 different types of cards in the game. We have actions, boosts, as well as species cards that are used for endgame scoring. And each round will end with the asteroid moving closer and closer to the planet of Alaria until we reach impact, which will end the game. And so like I was mentioning, each round, starting with the first player and going clockwise, players will be taking turns, taking 1 action each until everyone has passed. And so on your turn, there are 3 different types of actions that you can take, but you're only ever choosing 1. The first type of action that you can take is you can assign one of your 3 landers that are in a ready zone to one of the locations at that world. And so I just want to note that because this is a prototype, these are definitely not going to be the final pieces for the landers. Now, as you can see, the board is split into 2 sections. We have the planet of Alaria as well as its moon, which is called Fortuna. And so each world has their own corresponding set of sites. And sites are the larger gray boxes. And within each site are several locations. And this is important because most locations can only hold 1 lander. And so in a 2-player game, you can only assign your lander to a site that is completely unoccupied. So it is important to differentiate between sites and locations. Although there are 2 locations on the board that are considered unlimited, which means any number of landers can be placed in those locations. Now, once you assign your lander, you'll resolve the effect of the space. And so on Alaria, a lot of the spaces here will gain you resources. And in this game, there are 5 different types of resources, and you'll keep track of them all on your player board. We have energy, knowledge, minerals, and organics. And the 5th type of resource is called ingenuity, which you can always spend as a wild resource in place of any of the 4 basic types. And so each of these 4 sites works the same way. If you assign your lander to the topmost spot here, you'll immediately gain 3 knowledge. And the spaceship symbol that are on some of these locations means at the end of the round, this lander is going to move to the ready area of the opposite world, which in this case is the moon. So this is one of the ways in which you can move your landers from world to world. Alternatively, you can place your lander on the bottom space here, which would instead give you a multiplier depending on how many tags you spend. And so over the course of the game, players will have the opportunity to acquire 3 different types of tags. There are planet tags, science, and moon tags. Whenever you gain a tag, you'll place it on your player board, and any time an action allows you to spend a tag, you'll just flip it over. And so in this example, if I had a planet tag and I were to flip it over when taking this action, I would gain 2 knowledge for each one that I flip. At the end of the round, these will refresh, so I'll have them to use from round to round. In addition, the various cards in the game will also show tags in their upper left-hand corner. So when taking this action, I can also spend cards from my hand and use their tags as a multiplier. The card would go into my discard pile, but just like the tags, I'd be able to pick up the cards back into my hand at the end of the round. And that is how all 4 of the resource sites works. In addition to gaining resources, while you're on the planet of Alaria, you also have the option of gaining cards from the display by going to one of the 2 locations at the Develop Strategy site. The top location lets you gain several cards by discarding 1 planet tag for each card you'd like to take, and the bottom unlimited location lets you either gain 1 card or 1 resource of your choice. Now in this game, there are 3 different types of cards. We have action cards that you can play as a turn, we have boost cards that are played as soon as a specific criteria has been met, and we have species cards that provide you with tags as well as endgame scoring criteria. Now each type of card requires you to spend a different type of resource, and the amount that you have to spend is equal to how many cards you have in your hand. And that's going to be all of the cards that you own in your hand as well as in your discard pile. At the start of the game, players will each start with 1 of each type of card, which means if I wanted to purchase, say, an action card, I would be required to spend 3 knowledge. On the other hand, boost cards require you to spend minerals, and species cards require you to spend organics. And when purchased, cards go directly into your hand, so they'll be immediately available. But we'll talk a little bit more about cards later. As for the moon locations, this is where our hubs are located, where we do all of our scientific research. Which means here we'll be able to work on a couple of the projects, we'll be able to conduct research, and we'll have some locations that'll vary from game to game. Now again, just like on Alaria, any spaces that are marked with the spaceship symbol will send your lander over to the other world at the end of the round. And so this space in particular gives you 3 different options that you can take. You can take the first player marker, or you can raise the income cap of your ingenuity track. Now, just like the landers, these small cubes will look different in the final copy. They represent income caps that basically give you a minimum amount of that certain resource to start at from round to round. And so at the start of the game, they all start at 0. But if I take that action that allows me to raise the income cap of my ingenuity track, that means at the start of the next round, I will always have a minimum of 1 ingenuity. And there'll be several ways throughout the game that allow you to raise these income caps, such as conducting research and as the benefit of a lot of these cards. Alternatively, the third option here just allows you to gain ingenuity by spending moon tags. So unlike on Alaria, where you spent planet tags, on the moon, you'll spend moon tags. On the moon, you can also conduct research, and each location tells you how many research actions you can actually take. Now, each player has their own tech lab that is found on your player board, and your lab is divided into 3 areas. We have simple upgrades, tech 1, and tech 2 upgrades. And for each research action you have, you can spend knowledge in order to unlock one of your upgrades. In addition, these 2 locations have a location modifier that states that you can spend science tags in place of knowledge when performing these upgrades. Simple upgrades allow you to pay knowledge in order to raise your income caps, or you can spend knowledge to gain one of the 3 tags. On the other hand, Tech 1 upgrades give you ongoing abilities once they've been unlocked. And so as an example, I can spend 2 knowledge to place one of my cubes on one of the 3 slots up here. And if so, for the rest of the game, I pay 1 resource less whenever I acquire a card. As for Tech 2 upgrades, these will give you opportunities to score points in-game. So as an example, if I pay 5 knowledge to unlock this bottom upgrade, every time I purchase a card, I'll gain 1 point. And that is essentially how upgrades works, as well as the research action. And finally, the last type of actions that you'll see on the main board is the ability to contribute to the 3 different projects that will save the world. On the moon, you can build the laser or raise the shield, and on Alaria, you can advance the evacuation track. When contributing to these projects, all 3 actions works the same way. You can either advance once on the track with the top location, or you could advance several times by spending moon tags. Now, for each step you advance on the tracks, you'll have to spend a certain amount of a specific type of resource. For advancing the lasers, you'll have to spend energy. For the shields, you'll spend minerals, and for evacuation, you'll spend organics. And the amount of resources you'll have to spend is based off of the threshold that your token is entering into. And so if I were to advance one space on the laser track, I would have to spend 1 energy. But if I had gone to this location instead, and I discarded 3 moon tags, then I'd be able to advance 3 steps instead of 1, paying a total of 3 energy. Advancing on the 3 tracks will also gain you a couple of benefits. The first thing is the first player to reach the spots that have a number on top will gain that many victory points. In addition, after advancing your marker, you'll also gain the benefit listed on the topmost reward token here, which in this case would allow me to raise the income cap of one of the resources on my player board. But the first time a player reaches a space with this arrow symbol, that will require you to remove the topmost token, changing the reward for the rest of the game. And the rewards will vary depending on the project. And so when advancing on the shields, you'll be allowed to take a research action. And the evacuation track, as an example, will gain you a science tag. But of course, the main point of these project tracks is at the end of the game, players will score a certain amount of victory points depending on their relative position to each other on each of the tracks. In addition, for each step you advance on the track, you'll place a cube corresponding to that project in the project bag. And this is going to help determine which of the 3 projects is the pivotal project that saves the world at the end of the game. And that's essentially it. Those are all of the different types of actions that you'll see on the main board, as well as the main types of actions that you'll see sort of distributed across all of the cards. Now on your turn, instead of assigning a lander to a location, you can choose to take the express shuttle, which allows you to move your lander from one world to another. To do this, you have to spend 1 energy, and it takes your entire turn. So you'll want to plan accordingly if you'd like to transfer your landers from one space to another. The last option for what you can do on your turn is you can play an action card from your hand. Action cards always require you to spend 1 energy in order to resolve its effect. Action cards will typically allow you to gain resources or additional tags, and some action cards even allow you to contribute to the 3 different projects. Now, just as a note, during the round, players will also have the opportunity to play boost cards from their hand. Each card tells you when exactly you can play it, and they each also provide players with 2 tags that they can use instead of the card's ability. Species cards, on the other hand, always provide 1 of each type of tag that you can use by discarding the card, and at the end of the game, they'll provide players with personal endgame scoring criteria. So a lot of the strategy will be in making sure you have the proper species cards to score, as well as contributing to the right projects that you think will be the pivotal project in the end. Once all players have passed, then the round ends with a progress phase. During this phase, the asteroid will advance by 1 space, resolving any effects on the space. And so in this example, this will actually flip over one of the variable locations that are on the moon. And the number of these locations is going to be determined by the player count. And the game comes with several of these, so the locations will change from game to game. Then you'll draw a number of cubes from the bag equal to the current threat level, which in this case is 2 cubes. Now at the start of the game, the bag will contain 1 asteroid cube per player. But each time players contribute to one of the 3 projects, their corresponding cubes will also get added to the bag. And certain spaces along the asteroid's path will also require you to add additional asteroid cubes to the bag. So then, each project cube drawn will get placed on the corresponding progress track. But each asteroid cube drawn will progress the asteroid by 1 additional space. And as soon as either the asteroid or one of the 3 project tracks has reached the impact point, then that marks the end of the game, because the asteroid has unfortunately crashed into Alaria. If the game hasn't ended, then you'll prepare for the next round by discarding the topmost threat marker, which means you'll draw more cubes at the end of the next round, and all players will pick up their discarded cards, refresh any spent tags, and raise their empty resources back up to their income caps. As soon as the asteroid reaches its impact point, the game will end, and before tallying up your final scores, you'll first need to determine the pivotal project. First, you'll attempt to fire the lasers by drawing 10 cubes from the bag and placing all laser and asteroid cubes on the laser progress meter. If the meter is full, then the laser is the pivotal project. If not, then any drawn shield and evacuation cubes go back into the bag, and you'll draw an additional 10 cubes, this time placing all shield and asteroid cubes on the shield progress meter. In addition, you'll also move additional cubes from the laser progress meter to the shield track. And if the shield meter is not completely filled, then unfortunately, both plans have failed, and now we must resort to an evacuation. Once the pivotal project has been determined, then players will now score points depending on their relative positions along each track. You'll then add up all the points on your species cards, and at that point, whoever has the most points wins. And that is essentially how you play How to Save a World. Now again, this game is currently on Kickstarter, so for more information regarding the game, I've included a link to their Kickstarter in the description below. If you have any questions about anything that you saw here today, please feel free to leave me a comment down below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope it was helpful. If you enjoy content like this and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing. Thank you. Bye.